In Diablo 2, one of the most misunderstood aspects of the game is how various skills work on gear, namely the effects of plus skills, skill charges, chance to cast, and finally, auras when equipped. Each of these has a set of rules it follows, some able to be exploited, others sadly only have rules to limit their power, but all have situations where they can be extremely valuable to a given build or strategy. Though before we dive in, this video is sponsored by the patrons, Twitch subs, and channel members since their direct support makes this more deep dive style content possible since YouTube systems generally hate it. Starting with the most well-known of the batch, we have plus skills. These are bonuses that do what they say on the tin, providing plus levels to the skills that they list, though some rules do apply, at least depending on the type of source. Though the big rule for all of them is that plus skills are what are known as soft points, so they do not contribute to the standard synergy effects because they only boost the functional level of the skill rather than the base. That said, skills such as Masteries, Druid Animal Summons, Prayer, and such do not follow this rule, due to how they interact with their linked skills. But for most other skills, it is best to assume these plus skills will not provide a synergy boost. As far as the plus skill types themselves, plus all skills functions for any skill you can use that does not require charges or triggers, plus fire skills grants a bonus to all known fire type skills regardless of class, and plus class skills and plus tree skills only work for their given class or tree. For example, plus necromancer skills only boost necromancer skills, whereas plus lightning spells only work for a sorceress because it's her tree. Similarly, when a single skill lists class only, it will only provide the listed bonus for that specific class. While these class-only bonuses are on several different items throughout the game, they can also spawn naturally as what are known as staff mods, since they originally generated on staves, wands, and scepters, but with Lord of Destruction were expanded to include new items such as orbs, necroheads, and higher-level assassin claws, as well as druid and barbarian helmets. The rules for these spawning naturally are a bit odd and are determined by item level, and while there are exceptions, you will generally find they can only spawn skills of similar levels. For example, you won't find a wand with Poison Nova and Corpse Explosion staff mods on it naturally, since Nova is tier 6, while Corpse Explosion is only tier 2. But you can get Poison Nova and Summon Resist because they are tier 6 and 5 respectively. There are also hard blocks on several skills that in previous versions of the game required several failed spawns to generate, but don't seem to functionally appear in Resurrected, with skills like Poison Dagger never showing up. The last of the plus skills are where a little bit of confusion comes in, and that is off-class skills, known as O skills. These are specific class skills, but they are available to all classes, regardless of whether they naturally have them or not. The special way these work is that every class that does not naturally have the skill gets the full listed bonus. However, characters that naturally have the skill available to them only get at most +3 to the skill from the O skill bonuses. Moving on to something a bit more simple, we have skill charges, which are basically limited use spell sources that require repairing to restore, which means don't use them if the item is ethereal, since they won't come back then. Now, the way these work mechanically is that they cast at the level listed and cannot be boosted by plus skills of any sort, but they can be improved by synergies and masteries, though due to the limited levels of the skill, this is very rarely something of note, and each source of a spell functions a little like throwing potions or arrows, in that quantity left is tracked solely on the source being used and will be used at that level and that level alone. As far as where they're found, obviously things like uniques, sets, rune words can get a wide spectrum of the charges, and those are at fixed levels and quantities based on the item, but you can also get them from magic and rare items through suffixes, and the higher level the source that dropped them, the higher level the skill, and the more charges it will have. Though sadly, most of the skills from charges, aside from maybe teleport, are generally treated as relatively useless in the end game, but there are a few that can help out with more budget setups if you know your skills well enough. Next up, we have something that functions on a similarly fixed level, chance to cast. These functions on a few conditions, such as attack, striking, being struck, leveling up, on death, and on kills. Most of these being fairly straightforward, though there is some wobbliness in the attack and striking options that vary based on the skills being used, so you want to double check it, especially on the assassin, to see which ones are carried and under what conditions. As far as the skill levels of the chance to cast functions, they cannot be altered. Even stacking identical modifiers by equipping multiple items with the same chance to cast will not change the level it is cast at. Instead, it will only add the percent chances together for the sake of the check. And obviously going over 100% would be, well, redundant, since it can only trigger once. Though it is worth noting, to stack they need to be the exact same skill, level, and trigger. As far as ways to improve the output of chance to cast stuff, while you cannot boost their levels, you can boost their synergies, and this will impact them. So if you have a chance to cast Twister, it can have its damage improved by bumping up Tornado to give it that percent nudge up. It unfortunately, or fortunately for some items, does not work the other way around since these are not considered hard skills. If it worked the other way around, you would see some very broken PvP skills. Last but not least is Aura when equipped, which can only be found on rune words, well, in Alzorath, but that's the only exception currently. And these are an interesting dive into understanding how Diablo handles not only item-supplied auras, but also conflicting and overriding auras, and while knowing highest aura wins as a general rule of thumb is going to serve you best for most of this, there will be one exception we'll need to cover. But first, the simple stuff. Starting with aura level, the aura level provided by an item is going to be its listed amount, plus any other item provided aura when equipped of the same aura. For example, if you have an Edge and a Bramble, both are level 15 Thorns. It works if they're different levels as well. They will both provide level 30 Thorns though. Though since Thorns is a highest level wins aura, you will only get a single level 30 Thorns since it can only win out once. And if we move over to something that has a synergy, for example an Insight on a Prayer Mercenary, you'll have the mid-level meditation provided by Insight, and it will get its synergy from Prayer providing you healing. But since Prayer is also a separate aura, the Mercenary will provide healing from both, basically allowing you to double up on the healing effect, since even though they're synergies, they're not competing due to being just different auras, allowing that function to stack. Now, where all of this gets weird is in the damage auras, which will be linked at the end of the video, and if I remember, I'll put them in the description down below as well. These follow all the same rules as the above, in that the actual aura will stack and compete, and also work with synergies and masteries. The wobbly part though is that damage auras do not apply their aura to the enemies in the normal sense. Instead, they just pop off damage at 2-second intervals as the aura refreshes, and this means that damage isn't competing. So to use a recent example, the Dragon Paladin wearing 2 Dragon Armors providing level 14 Holy Fire each and a Hand of Justice providing level 16 Holy Fire results in the Paladin holding 3 sources of level 44 Holy Fire. As far as the damage applied to his weapon, this only gets applied once because he is under the effect of a competing aura, but for enemies, they are hit by all 3 level 44 Holy Fire sources at once, essentially tripling the radial damage of the skill. And this effect is also used by Tesladins with dual level 30 Holy Shocks, and could theoretically be used for Holy Freeze and Sanctuary by Barbarians, but due to the lack of synergies for them, it would not be terribly effective. Now, this is why these are strong though, since most notably the Paladin, through natural synergies, and the Sorceress through her masteries, can heavily boost this tick damage by investing in the appropriate skills, to basically give the full synergy boost. And they both can combine it with Conviction, either naturally in the Paladin's case, or through Infinity in the Sorceress's case, to strip away resistances to these effects. And this stacking effect is likely why we'll see Oridans only as low level or endgame options, rarely in between, since these tricks just don't work with the naturally cast auras, and also why we sadly will likely never see Act 3 mercenaries gain access to elemental masteries. I know this was a bit longer of a video for the one-offs, but it is a fairly big subject to tackle, and if you have any questions, or if I missed something you were curious about, mention it down below, and if I know the answer, I'll try to give it to you. And as always, a special thanks to the channel members, patrons, and Twitch subs that make these deep dives possible, since the more support we have there, the less we need to chase the infernal YouTube algorithm.